I just realized I was muted. Hi, how are you? I saw my mouth wasn't moving. I was just like, shit. Hang on, let me turn this shit down. Shut up! No good way to level it, is there? Anyway, hi. Hi. Howdy doody, gamers. Wow, this is still pretty loud, isn't it? Oh, that's why my audio was at fucking 40. Hello! Are y'all enjoying the commentary music that I had on for you? What? Sarah! Good morning, gamers. Good morning. Hello! Good luck, Art and Sarah, EP. Go EP, Sarah! I appreciate you stopping by. How are you? God damn it, Zetra.
Better places to take a nap than on the ground, you know.
Co51 can? Thank you so much for the follow. Welcome on in. Hang on, I'm so disoriented. I started literally 3 seconds ago.
I know.
My goodness.
Oh my
this clip's
god.
so loud.
I can't wait for it to just kill you.
I will give you
Just
your
do it,
era in a
please.
second, Zetra.
I knew it! God damn it! Where's the shovel now?
Thank you for the head pats tier, and the hydrate, and the stretch.
Thank you for the follow.
I will stretch. Ow. Okay. Okay. Here you are, Zetra. Hang on. Thank you, Zetra, for that poignant response. Thank you, tier. Thank you, tier, for that. Again, very, very, very mature, you guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. But yeah, welcome on in, Raiders. My name is KV. I'm a PNG tuber artist. I worked in this PNG that you're currently looking at, and I'm here doing some art. Thank you, Zetra! I'm here doing some art. Yeah, if you guys need to, you know, go use the restroom, go get some food, do whatever you need to do, I will be here to entertain because we're just vibing tonight. Because I am too tired. Oh, I forgot my fishing! Guys, I forgot the fishing. I forgot. Artists and artists. God damn it, Zetra! Guys, this is important. I forgot the fishing. This is. There we go. I have 20k points. Yeah, I know you do. I should change the title of the stream. Fish! There we go. You guys can fish now. Okay! Yes! Thanks for the lurk. But yeah, welcome on in, gamers. How are you? How was your stream? How'd it go? How's it? Oh, Sarah's asleep now, so I guess she can't tell me how did her stream go. But yes, it's time for the art once again. I'm doing. I didn't mean to lurk. It's okay. Oh, you got a koi. It's okay. We're just vibing tonight. So, lurks are welcome. But guess what? What? What'd you do? What happened? Who got arrested? I don't know why that was the first thing that I jumped to. 2.0 design is now being calmed. Hell yeah! Does it have a skirt? Do you have a tearaway skirt? Because if not, I'm going to be very disappointed. Hi, X. Hello, my son. So I have a proposition for y'all, because we are going to watch videos tonight. But I want y'all's opinion because I have 2 different options for y'all. Do you guys want to watch fucking that? Do you guys want video documentaries, like for video games and stuff like that, or do you guys want to just like sit and vibe and watch Game Grumps? Because I'm totally fine with either. Poot poot poot. Yeah. Vibe. Yes, I know. Yes. It's a disaster feeling like a man. Are you really feeling apathy? The moves make it come running after me. Running after me. I want analog horror. I mean, we got a couple analog horrors. Did I press a button? I did not. Thank goodness. Who the fuck is Henry? Why is a shoe in my lake? There will be no skirt on the model. Boo! Can we pay to have a skirt on the model? I'm about to put a fucking time limit on the poots. Panty's just along for the ride. But there will be a thick tail. Good. Use the tail as a golf club. I've never seen Game Grumps TBH. Well, I can say that they're not for everyone, but they help me with like they're good like background noise to keep on as I work. What the fuck? What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? Wait, what the pieces in the back? I can tell that you. Oh, what did I do? What am I doing? Disaster feeling like a man. Are you really feeling apathy? Got the most make it come running after me. Got the most make it come running after me. Yeah, I'll turn the auto hide on, cause why not? I like that, make a gentleman stare. Do not log in while it is visible. Okay. You heard the thing. Goodbye. Why do y'all want a skirt? Because you'd look great in a skirt. Just saying. Looking like that, make a gentleman care. Oh yeah, I hope you guys got your Chocopur mounts as well, because there's only like 2 days left in order to like redeem those. And I believe, if I'm not streaming Final Fantasy tomorrow, I believe that yesterday was the last time that you will be able to get it from my streams. So I hate that mount. Why? I love the Chocopokur mount. It's so cute. Skirt just must come to life. Why is the leaf fleshy? What? Blue discus. I have never heard it referred to as fleshy. Honestly, that's just kind of disturbing for me. For me personally. What do I have? What do I have? What do I have? I'm gonna put this at a cooldown. I'm gonna put this at a cooldown. Meow, 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 meow. The leaf art is actually its body and its skin if you look at it. What? Hang on. I need to look at this. It's just the design, not a model yet, so no skirt. Does that mean there is a possibility that there will be a skirt in the future? Zetra, I feel like you're lying to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you got a golden crown! Holy shit! Jess is the king. Jess is the king of the lake. Also, I think the fleshy part that you're thinking of is just the veins, which it's a leaf. It's meant to have veins. My God. It's coming out of him. It's part of him. He's a sprout. What do you expect? He's literally supposed to be like a fucking like a leaf plant. And you're just firmly grasping it and wriggling around. Yeah, because that's how you harvest a plant. I don't know what you expected. Completely honest with you. Alright, I found a video that's called The History of Analog Horror, so that's gonna be interesting. Every breath that I take, the love that we make, I always shared it with you. You. I already knew. There we go. Hey, y'all get to watch analog horror while I work. So let me just pause. Where is it? There it is. Hi, Charles! Hi, Zareth! Wish I could stay up more, KB, but I should get some sleep. Have a good stream. You too! Have a good night! Why is it muted? Shush! Have a good night, Zareth! Zert. If people would pay for the extra toggle, I'd put a skirt toggle on it. Vita Carnus is a good analog horror. I have seen like bits and pieces of Vita Carnus. I know that it's good.
Dominated the
It's
planet
muted. Okay, there we go.
until the birth of the internet. And within the internet, a new form of media rose
Ah,
to
yes, the
prominence.
interwebs.
A type of immersive storytelling called unfiction. Stories told as if they're real, with you as part of the story.
Wouldn't that be
Within this new
nonfiction?
form of media, many
Oh,
trends have come and
unfiction.
gone as it's
Okay.
evolved in its own bubble. Written stories
Booba
called
toggle and skirt
creepypastas,
toggle as
a
goals.
shared
Got it.
universe of found
There
footage
are
web
better
series
That'd be
places
called
to
the
take a nap than
Slenderverse.
on the ground.
Bad Gal
you know.
Cryptic
Beach.
puzzles
What a
made or
name. Thank you for
inspired
the
by
follow. Welcome on in.
mysterious Cicada 3301 group. However, in
Stream
recent
Elements,
years,
stop
one
lying to
trend
them.
has slowly grown from a niche subgenre to the dominant form of unfiction, taking over the field and dominating the internet at large in an
Eesh.
unprecedented way. It's a subgenre that harkens back to old mediums of the past. It's a subgenre now known as analog horror. My name is Alex Hara. I'm a filmmaker, documentarian, and a creator of unfiction, including a project in this subgenre. I'll be your narrator in this documentary as we explore
Is
the
Alex
mechanisms
Hara
of the
the guy
genre,
that made the
interview
Backrooms?
creators, and chronicle the history of analog horror.
Hold on a second. Pretty sure I just pressed another button. Hold on a second. I need to look into this. Shut up! Make documentaries and other cool things. Yeah, of course you did. What did you make, sir? Oh, he made Walker Creek. Interesting. Alright. The back rooms are from my state. That makes sense. It sounds almost like the 8-bit version of the Gravity Falls theme.
So, in my eyes, analog horror must first and foremost be using analog
Nick
technology.
Nocturne!
Analog horror is a subgenre of found footage horror.
Analog horror is any horror medium that utilizes an analog broadcast or tape or film aesthetic.
Analog horror is any sort of horror media that uses VHS video technology and
Nick!
aesthetic.
Anything that is in like an old damaged VHS style.
A form of found footage.
Found footage, but it takes the aesthetic of the VHS, VCR, staticky analog era of television to
I feel like some of these guys
deliver
have
the
controversy
required,
about them, but I don't remember who
instability
does.
that a lot of horror is, needs to function, where you don't trust the medium because there are problems, there are glitches.
It uniquely uses the limitations of the medium, such as its low resolution.
Rough around the edges, I guess you could say.
There's like imperfections in like the medium, so like the graininess, the, like what we call like the snow, VHS snow.
That invoke a feeling of fear and dread.
A narrative is conveyed through
Alex
an analog
Kishner, I'm
format. For
pretty
example,
sure had some
broadcast
fucked up
by
shit about
analog
him.
Signal, VHS tape.
TV broadcasts.
That's just
camera
creepy.
footage.
Wow.
Must harken back to the days of cathode ray tube television sets, VCRs, cameras that utilize tape.
The thing that's being played back is an actual physical like medium instead of just like a file or that you might see in a digital thing.
It's got to be pre-digital. That's the kind of era that
Am I
we're looking
wrong?
at.
Well,
I would say unfiction
We'll
is
see.
definitely a big part that plays into analog horror.
Before we begin exploring the history of analog horror, we first need to define what it is. The idea of analog horror is incredibly vast. The name suggests that this is any type of horror that uses a retro or analog aesthetic, but in practice, that definition stretches far wider than the actual genre, and everyone seems to have their own ideas of what it is. Let's focus on that last part though. Unfiction. Analog horror is, for the most part, a subgenre of unfiction. Online stories that insist that they are real, and dedicate themselves to seeming as convincing as possible, with in-character writing, found footage videos, and more. Analog horror with immersive viewer interaction are known as analog horror alternate reality games, or ARGs. Those without interaction are simply analog horror web series. Now, the line between an
RMKs and
unfiction web
SE.
series and a found footage web series is a blurry one, depending on various opinions and immersive
Sustained
elements that
only
are
by
or
fucking
aren't
fruit
included,
gummies
but
and
right now,
nuggies.
that's not important. To simplify the definition a little more, we typically think of analog horror as modern digital videos that recreate the poor quality of degraded live broadcasts, VHS tapes, or other analog media from the late 1900s and early 2000s, which makes up what we'll call the analog aesthetic. The content could be that of a stylized live TV
What
program,
timing?
advertisement, camcorder video, or something else entirely. The only hard rule is that it replicates what you would see in the time of analog technology, with era-appropriate visual styles and music like smooth jazz or muzak. The footage is meant to be unsettling in nature, containing some sort of unnerving or horrific plot often hiding just under the surface. It commonly involves supernatural or
Fish,
even
go eat
Lovecraftian
your
elements
food.
that become more apparent over time, sometimes through the use of TV
He says,
broadcast
going to
hijacking.
fish.
Now, keep in mind that all of that is just a baseline definition, and there are many exceptions that we'll dive into later. In the end, the key takeaway is that analog horror is defined by its use of the analog aesthetic, and how it adds to the unsettling nature of the story.
One last fish before I go. Go eat your food.
Today, analog horror is perhaps the most popular and influential development to ever happen in unfiction, and because of that, we have some important questions to answer, such as how did we land on the current definition of analog horror?
Does
Why is
unfiction
analog
also
horror an
count,
unfiction
like,
subgenre? What made this subgenre become so popular in
self-insert
recent years?
fanfiction?
Those questions can't be solved until we ask one
Thank you, Jess.
far more important, overarching question, though. When did it start? Let's rewind to the beginning. The real beginning.
Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the Air in The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells.
New York City, October 30, 1938. By this point in history, a small number of TV stations had begun appearing in the United States, but radio was the dominant form of media. On this particular Sunday, a radio play called War of the Worlds aired on the Columbia Broadcasting System station, created by a man named Orson Welles. The story
Of
of
course
this
it was
infamous
Orson Welles.
broadcast is well documented. But in short,
makes sense.
it was an adaptation of the novel War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, with a slight twist. It was designed to be told in an entirely immersive way, at least for the first half. This type of radio play had been attempted in Britain and Australia before this, but War of the Worlds had the largest impact. It takes on the format of average everyday radio broadcasts, which are periodically interrupted by news bulletins of an alien invasion, slowly getting more intense, frequent, and terrifying, until the news bulletins
Oh my
permanently
God!
interrupt the broadcast to document
Linksy!
the takeover.
Hello! Hold on. Welcome on in, Raiders!
But it's no use.
Arden up, yo. Hello, my name is KV, yo. Oi! Hello, welcome in. Hang on, let me switch over here. Welcome in, Raiders. My name is KV. I'm a PNG tuber artist that works in this PNG that you're currently looking at, and I'm here doing some art. How are you? How long have you been streaming? I saw you streaming earlier. Hi. Gonna give you a casual shout out.
I'm doing the gritty.
Six hours, Keck. Wow.
No.
Oh my god. Get shouted out, nerd. Go follow Legacy. They do good content. Yes. Hello. But also, 6 hours? You were playing Sunhaven for 6 hours? Amnesia the bunker. God, that shit looks scary. But yes, welcome on in. If you guys need to, feel free to go, use the restroom, get some water, get some food, do whatever you need to do. I will be here simply vibing. The rare moments I threw off my old headset. Yeah. It does look fucking... honestly, if there was... I shouldn't say that. I was gonna say if there was a woman whispering that kind of shit in my ear, I would also throw off my headset, but I feel like I would have two very different reactions depending on the situation. Anyway, let's go back here. But yeah, tonight's just a vibe night. We're not playing like Final Fantasy or anything. We're just kind of watching analog horror stuff and doing some art. So much farming and fishing. Speaking of fish, if you want to do exclamation point fish, we have a virtual fishing game. Which is fun. Someone caught a crown, I guess. The currency doesn't do anything, but I think the developer said that they were going to do something with it. But yeah, Linksy, if you need to rest, feel free to do so. Do all your streaming aftercare. I don't know what you do for streaming aftercare, but I hope you have a good night. I appreciate you. But yes. Fucking Desi, man. Amnesia the Bunker has probably been the most horrifying game I've played out of horror games. Yeah. Was that Desi that did that? I honestly couldn't tell. God, she has such a good voice though. I kind of want to do that. Like, I want to have it so that like I'm playing a horror game and my friends give me like different voice clips and stuff like that just to freak me out while I'm playing and people can redeem it. Little shit. Yeah. She do be, very frightening. She is a siren, so it makes sense. But yes, let us go back to the documentary. Because line art is a bitch.
Orson Welles' War of the Worlds terrified the country, and it served as an important moment for both unfiction and analog horror.
Insert
due to its
knocking on the
place as
door
one of
sound
the
here.
first documented
Honestly,
immersive
I would
live
piss
broadcast
myself.
projects, carrying many of the traits that would later become key to immersive media as a whole. Like modern unfiction, War of the Worlds was an experimental project many enjoyed and that even terrified some who thought it was real due to how realistic its presentation was. For analog horror specifically, it contains the corruption of realistically created live broadcasts, something seen in almost every project in the subgenre today.
I will be lurking, have fun, and kick that line art's ass.
Though,
I'll
of course,
try!
modern analog horror
Line
trends more towards
arting a braid
recreating
is
analog
hard.
television than analog radio. This is all thanks to the
But I'm doing my
1950s
best.
golden age of
Have a
analog
good rest,
television.
Linksy.
Over the course of the mid-20th century, radio declined in popularity as television rose to dominance. From 1950 to 1959, in only 9 years, the amount of American households with a television rose from 9% to 85%. The future was set in stone, and from this point onwards, television dominated media and culture as a whole. This sets the stage for the release of David Cronenberg's Videodrome in 1983. The film tells the story of a TV executive, Max Wren, who gets involved with a mysterious, small-time television program called Videodrome. This program contains people being tortured and softcore pornography. Moreover,
good.
it's later revealed to cause brain tumors while you watch it, and it eventually drives the main character to shoot himself at its order. Yes, you heard that right. Analog horror partially owes its success to softcore porn. Many of the themes of the later
This does
analog
not
horror
surprise me.
subgenre are seen and possibly
Hello?
even originate.
I guess I accidentally pressed a button on my keyboard that played the Spotify. Nice.
With Videodrome.
Everyone's
While these
favorite.
themes
yes,
are difficult
softcore
to
porn. Hi,
explain this
Mastis.
early in the timeline, much of analog horror deals with the harmful effects of media consumption. Everyone has heard that television rots your brain, and over the years we've seen how modern media harms society in a multitude of ways. Videodrome embodies the ideas and fears about this subject matter more than most, and in the same way that analog horror and modern media like Black Mirror do. It plays with the idea of
Yes,
harmful
Black
stimuli
Mirror.
from sinister analog broadcasts that can physically harm you, threaten you, mentally corrupt you, and speak directly with you while you watch. It's a concept commonly
the
seen in
porn!
the analog horror
Porn
project
rots your
we'll explore
brain!
over the course of this documentary, alongside the concept of horrific, disturbing, unregulated live TV programs as a whole. In the words of director David Cronenberg,
as a kid, we had a television set with an antenna that rotated, and you could rotate it from inside your house. And when the major channels would go off the air, you could rotate it and pick up strange other channels from smaller cities around, from across the border in Buffalo and so on. And you would see strange things that were kind of hard to see. There was a lot of static, and it was very intriguing to watch that kind of thing. And that was really the core, the crystal at the center of this movie, was my experience with that, thinking, well, what if the images that you pulled up were really quite extreme, disturbing, possibly illegal, and what would you think then?
Videodrome wasn't the first, last, or even the most well-known movie to use TV as a horror concept. When most people think of terrifying television, they think of 2002's The Ring. However, Videodrome was one of the most influential on analog horror, and its themes and designs are eerily similar to the subgenre of today. As a result of the times, analog media was already being used for horror in the 1980s. In its own way, Videodrome planted the seeds for the themes of the future subgenre. But this was only the beginning, and things were not about to slow down.
Ooh, gross.
As they said in the film,
on with the new flesh.
Gross.
Chicago, Illinois, the night of November 22nd, 1987. This is when the famous Max Headroom incident occurred. Two TV stations, WGN-TV and WTTW, were hijacked mid-program. A man imitating the British TV character Max Headroom appeared, and in short sub-2-minute broadcast intrusions, he made various odd comments before disappearing forever. He was never caught.
Well, if you're wondering what's happened, so am I.
While the content
was
of these
never
intrusions
caught,
wasn't disturbing
ever!
in nature, it was incredibly unsettling, and it became a very well-known urban legend. The same could be said for the Captain Midnight broadcast hijacking that occurred a year prior, on April 27, 1986. Captain Midnight was even less unsettling than Max Headroom, simply displaying color bars and a text message, but it was still a bizarre, off-putting event seen by the entire eastern United States. These broadcast hijackings became legendary, unsettling, and terrifying for those who watched and for those who learned of the events after the fact. They became direct inspirations for several analog horror projects in the following decades. And in fact, the decade following it, the 1990s, were a flashpoint for immersive storytelling and, in retrospect, for the origins of the future analog aesthetic.
Future!
London, October 31st, 1992. An immersive live television program aired on the BBC called Ghost Watch. Ghostwatch told the story of several supposed documentarians investigating a haunted house live on air on Halloween night, with some crew members remaining in the studio to monitor their progress and even answer calls from supposed viewers. However, things in the program begin to go horribly wrong for everyone involved. Paranormal events terrify and even injure the documentarians in the house. Supposedly real call-in viewers begin to report increased paranormal activity. Eventually, even the entire studio is overtaken with paranormal events, and the broadcast ends abruptly. This excellent immersive film blurred the lines between reality and fiction. Like many unfiction projects that would come along in the future, Ghostwatch used the idea of viewer interaction and the manipulation of a live broadcast to immerse viewers into its story. It was said to terrify all of Britain, and it was remembered for decades after it first aired.
Honestly, I find these paranormal activity things really funny because like if I was a ghost, I definitely wouldn't be like the kind of person to like haunt somebody like maliciously. I just like I just I think I would just do stuff to like prank the person that I'm haunting. Like I wouldn't do anything like malicious or anything. I'd just be like, "Hey, did you could you pick me up like some nachos from Taco Bell? I'm really hungry." And they just be like, oh god." I think I think that's the kind of like that's the kind of ghost that I'd be.
In the end, the concept of a real live broadcast portraying these events was the catalyst for this terror. The analog quality and execution of the story, cinematography, and editing contribute to the realism of the film. Clearly, it was something that stuck with people, and its influence, direct or indirect as it is, can be felt through the hundreds of modern analog horror projects that use the manipulation of a supposedly live broadcast to evoke similar feelings of terror. 7 years after Ghostwatch, in 1999, the horror found footage film The Blair Witch Project released, leading to the popularization of the found footage film genre and becoming one of the key founding pieces of unfiction. The Blair Witch Project became a common inspiration and template that professional and independent filmmakers, storytellers, and game designers from 1999 onwards would use to tell immersive fiction stories online, and they would eventually take on the name Unfiction. The Blair Witch Project was presented as a true story about several students lost in the woods with nothing but a camera while attempting to make a film about the legendary Blair Witch. While this was immersive in and of itself, the creators also made and released a fake documentary about the legend of the Blair Witch that aired on TV before the release of the film. A website was even created to further the legend in this documentary. With
Order
this,
some
a
Taco Bell.
transmedia story was unfolding.
Order some Taco Bell. Don't use Uber Eats. They always fuck up the order. And the sour cream is warm whenever we order with it. I just don't like sour cream, honestly. But yeah, that's the kind of shit that I would be up to if I was a ghost. Listen to me. I want you to go down to Taco Bell. I want you to get me a chicken chalupa with extra cheese, no sour cream. And I want you to get me a nacho Bel Grande with no sour cream, no tomatoes. So you'd basically be like the ghost from Ghosts. Yeah, pretty much. As a ghost, I'd mess with RPG hotbar settings. How dare you? I kind of want to see like a cartoon of like a ghost playing D&D. I think that'd be really funny. Like a ghost trying to befriend somebody just by playing D&D. And then they speak to the person not with like a Ouija board or anything, just by rolling dice. I'd perfect pressing Alt F4 Masters, you whore.
And all of the core elements of future unfiction projects were set in place. Blair Witch wasn't the first ARG or even the first unfiction project, but it was one of the first to insist that it was real, and go through the effort to keep up that illusion, combining found footage, realistic marketing, and in-universe websites. However, its significance to unfiction as a whole isn't the only reason we're talking about Blair Witch. This film, of course, has the so-called analog aesthetic during all of the footage, due to it being produced in a time where analog equipment was still in use. Though, Blair Witch wouldn't be considered the start of analog horror, not any more than previously discussed projects like Ghostwatch or other found footage films of the time like The Last Broadcast. Instead, analog horror actually began nearly a decade later in 2006 with an unassuming video in creepypasta called The Wyoming Incident. Creepypastas were, at this time, basically the peak of internet horror, a collaborative space made up of complex and often immersive stories. It was many people's first introduction to internet horror, horror in general, and especially to horror creation. It was an easily accessible medium with a low barrier of entry that served as the
Creepypastas are honestly just really funny to read nowadays. Because I was like, I'm looking to get scared. I'm gonna go read a creepypasta. And then I read it. And I can't remember which one I read. I think I read Ben Drowned. And I was just like, this is just kind of funny. Crash in the kitchen, haunted individual. Fuck was that? Place is new. Character sheet on the kitchen counter next to a note that says wanna play. That's creepy.
foundation for many beginners'
But
first
yeah.
projects, just like
Wanna
analog
play a
horror is in
game.
the modern day. But I'm getting ahead of myself. When it comes to the Wyoming incident, the original video is long gone. It was released alongside a creepypasta written about a broadcast intrusion that contained Videodrome-esque harmful frequencies, causing headaches, vomiting, and hallucinations. This was of course blatantly false, and there was no such frequency, but it added to the air of mystery around the video, and kept people speculating. The clip itself does portray a broadcast hijacking, extremely reminiscent of the real-life Max Headroom and Captain Midnight incidents. However, this project
Captain
turns the
Midnight.
horror up a notch beyond what we saw in the real world. The Wyoming incident uses VHS effects alongside terrifying faces from deep within the uncanny valley. Now, we'll put the rest of that ARG aside since it does go really off the rails, but the video itself was immensely terrifying, both in 2006 and the present day.
I love that that
It earns
person's
its place in
signature on the
history as one of the
Ew,
first
gross.
nonfiction videos on YouTube.
I love that that
and
person's
is one of the
signature on
first in the analog
their
horror
profile
subgenre.
was I'm going to
Though
run you
that
over with
label,
my
the
fucking
community,
lawnmower.
and the widespread nature of the format
Just
wouldn't
so
exist for
human.
almost 10 more years.
That is certainly one of the oldest things that I've got on record for what I've covered that kind of touches that kind of area. The Wyoming incident was far too old to even be able to judge its impact. Now, after it's been resurfaced through the retelling of the story online and the spread of the story online, it could certainly have influence, but I can't say that I'd be able to measure that comparative to what we're seeing now in the field.
Regardless of its impact, it's important to understand why the Wyoming incident gets to be called the first analog horror project. And to do that, we need to take a second look at what we've covered so far. There is one reason that War of the Worlds, Ghostwatch, the Blair Witch Project, and others are not considered analog horror. They're true analog creations. What separates these early works from the subgenre we know today is something quite simple. Analog horror is not analog. Instead, it's a digital recreation of analog mediums,
Indeed.
created with modern programs like Adobe Premiere and others. It mimics the terror of live broadcasts gone wrong like we saw in Ghostwatch and War of the Worlds, or in the real-life Max Headroom incident. It mimics the feeling of being lost in the woods in a pre-internet, pre-GPS age, like we saw in the Blair
Oh my
Witch
god, is that my main girl
But
KB?
it
I
is
don't know.
merely mimicking.
Is it?
And the genre is defined by its purposeful recreation of these formats. It's defined by how it's
Where am I?
designed to evoke a sense of nostalgia for a bygone age, whereas something that's an actual part of the age can't be designed to evoke nostalgia yet. This is the exact reason why the Wyoming incident is the first entry in the analog horror subgenre that we can identify. It's not an analog creation, but it uses real formats
hi,
and the
Claire.
analog aesthetic for the purposes of creating a certain
Long
atmosphere.
time no see, miss hanging with
Mainly
you and bonding to me.
In the
Yeah.
Wyoming incident,
I haven't seen you in a
broadcast
while.
hijackings, unsettling text, and the uncanny valley exist as a basis for its horror, which is a formula reused in many modern analog horror projects. We'll see many of these ideas and forms of mimicry come to fruition in the next few
like a
years of our
man.
timeline, as we get closer to the formation of the modern analog horror subgenre. We're not there yet, though. In the end of the 2000s, following the Wyoming incident, the idea of analog horror didn't gain any real traction. However, things were slowly brewing, and in 2009, the Slenderman-focused founder of the modern unfiction and ARG field, Marble Hornets, burst into existence. Marble Hornets was the project that led to the birth of the Slenderverse, which was, as Evan Santiago beautifully
Marble
put it in his
Hornets!
Slenderverse video essay, art for everyone. The Slenderverse was another collaborative online storytelling space reminiscent of creepypasta, a shared universe of online unfiction based around the Slenderman character, which, as Evan said, provided a template or a beginner's guide to allow first-time or otherwise inexperienced creators to experiment and take their first steps into film and unfiction, with a framework to support them and lower the barrier of entry. And this is a place that analog horror would take a little less than a decade later. It's important to keep in mind when looking through unfiction and analog horror in particular that many creators take heavy inspiration from the other projects in their niche and use them as an inspiration to begin their very own first projects before they branch out and become pioneers themselves.
Maybe I'll finally learn Final Fantasy 14.
Everybody's got to start somewhere, and it's very intimidating to look at the history of what's come before and look at the practical idea of I can sit at my desk and I alone can learn how to work this program, edit, put things together, and put them out, versus let me get a camera and then run out there with my friends and go to locations and hopefully not have police called on us and then come back and edit it and put it together and hope somebody cares about it. Anything that gets somebody's foot in the door when it comes to actual creativity is good for them. You know, it proves I have the ability to do something. If it's just me at the computer and I can put something together and people like it, that shows to me I have potential. And that will be the confidence that I would need as a creator to go forward and do something bigger that takes a better commitment.
I'm gonna go cry from
Creepypastas served this purpose, and at this point in the 2010s,
Have a good night, Claire.
the Slenderverse served
Sleep
that
well.
purpose. You'll see the pattern continue with analog horror soon enough.
Or at least rest.
In the meantime, Marble Hornets was shaking up the unfiction scene and the internet as a whole, though its place within analog horror is up for some debate.
Marble Hornets kicked off with a whole bunch of tapes that were, you know, technically analog technology. It was tape for the camera that was being used. And so exploring those, being able to play those back using that kind of older technology, and then putting it online and putting it into a digital format, that is a route there.
In its own way, it could be considered analog horror, but it was far from the design choices, tropes, and general style that make up what we call analog horror in the modern day, as it emphasizes the modern found footage aspect far more than anything analog.
Titan Corgi
Other
stole the
horror
show!
web
Exclamation
series
mark.
with analog aesthetics were slowly popping up too,
Hi, Kit.
like Skeleton Creek by Patrick Carmen.
Thank you for the
movement
sub-a-dub.
was growing, even if they didn't fit in with the
I
thematic or
appreciate you.
design
2
principles
months,
of the
holy
modern
shit.
analog horror subgenre.
Oh, it's a
And
prime sub-a-dub.
The label placed
Nice.
upon them doesn't increase or diminish their importance either way. Whether you call them proto-analog horror or call them the
Supreme
first analog
sub-a-dub.
horror, they were incredibly important and crucial for the evolution of the subgenre. However, they weren't the only important thing happening at this time. In the 2000s and the early 2010s, there was an incredibly important cultural and musical movement forming: Vaporwave. This began with hypnagogic pop in the 2000s, music using elements from the 70s, 80s, and 90s for nostalgic purposes. Over the course of a decade, hypnagogic pop continued to evolve, spawning other retro musical movements like chillwave, which were becoming more noticed and popular and properly defined around 2009. And then, boom, 2010, Kavinsky comes out with his new single, Night Call. The film Drive uses 2011, and synthwave, alongside its attached visual aesthetic Outrun, explodes onto the scene. And it's amazing. But also in 2011, Vaporwave kicked off with Laserdisc Visions and its attached visual aesthetic called Aesthetic. Yes, with all the spaces. When it comes to synthwave and Vaporwave, there are some shared traits, such as analog effects, retro-styled music, and bright flashy colors in their aesthetics, which are all elements used heavily in analog horror. Synthwave and the Outrun aesthetic are largely reminiscent of the 80s more than any other decade. It often focuses on the style of 80s action film soundtracks and uses a darker color scheme. On the other hand, Vaporwave and Aesthetic focus on the early internet, concepts of consumerism and capitalism, and largely things from the 90s. Musically, it often samples or reuses music from the 1900s, or it recreates New Age or Muzak, and visually it mostly uses pastel colors. In the early 2010s, synthwave and vaporwave were spreading like wildfire across the internet, especially vaporwave. it was causing a massive resurgence in nostalgia for the 80s and 90s, and creating interest in the aesthetic and ideas of the genres, their relation to analog technology, and eventually to analog horror.
When people heard Macintosh Plus's Floral Shop, like everyone wanted in on, and so you just had like all this stuff just come in, and then like it's basically just almost like overload of new content. I'd say like with regards to that kind of appeal to the nostalgia of like the 80s, 90s time frame, especially when consumer electronics like VHS and other similar technologies were more prevalent. There's a shared nostalgia root between vaporwave and analog horror.
Today, vaporwave and aesthetic is the movement most commonly associated with analog horror, with videos in the
That's
subgenre
why
today
I like
often
watching
using
all
new
those
age
old
music,
commercials.
80s muzak, or even modern music like vaporwave that imitates muzak, alongside pastel colors and plenty of examples of early internet or anti-consumerism themes. It's one half of the analog horror soundscape, with the other of course being retro TV and VHS tape effects. And of course, analog horror evokes nostalgia for the analog age, extremely similarly to the nostalgia that vaporwave, synthwave, and other retro musical movements hoped to achieve as well. In total, vaporwave had a massive influence on analog horror, but not only in its content. Without the success of vaporwave or synthwave and the analog retro nostalgia-based aesthetics being developed within, analog horror might not exist. There is undeniable shared DNA, and it definitely deserves credit for its influence on the future subgenre. To sum it up, before the subgenre ever even existed, analog technology was used to evoke feelings of nostalgia and feelings of terror, either through the use of legitimate technology from the age or the recreation of that technology in the 2000s. The first analog horror video graced the internet in this period, as well as a few other projects that are debatably part of the analog horror scene or proto-analog horror. And beyond that, two previous collaborative online storytelling spaces rose to prominence and let novice creators take their first steps. And this is where we leave prehistory and jump into the more linear evolution of the subgenre. Over the next 10 years, from 2012 to 2022, analog horror would grow from essentially one video, a sense of nostalgia, and a developing aesthetic, to the massive multi-million viewer unfiction subgenre that we now know today.
Legend has it that there's this massive treasure.
Shut up!
Secret vault.
I cannot for your movies! Jesus.
Back then,
The
when
noive
Marble
of some
Hornets
people.
was kind of the big dog in internet horror stuff. You can think about it as kind of similar to what analog horror is now. It's like an original project will start that nobody has really kind of seen done in horror before. And then a lot of people will try to kind of come up with their own takes on it, or try to expand on it, or just kind of make fan works, etc. Like, I feel like that whole trend kind of died down for quite a few years, because that was almost 10 years ago, I think. It's kind of come back in a it comes and goes in waves in a way, and I just think that something like a new fresh take on found footage like this is something that is just revolutionary, and I think that a lot of people like myself has been waiting for something like this to come.
Enough pieces had been put in place by 2012 that we can actually see the analog horror subgenre take its first steps in a form we could recognize, beginning with VHS. The first VHS film and many of its sequels are reminiscent of 90s found footage films like The Last Broadcast and The Blair Witch Project. It's made up of various horror short films that are, in the story, found on VHS tapes and put together as an anthology. VHS was a widespread modern digital film with the analog aesthetic, purposefully chosen to increase the unsettling nature of the footage, a key aspect of the analog horror subgenre's current definition. It's yet another example of analog nostalgia and putting the concept of an analog aesthetic into the public consciousness. And continuing this trend, a year after VHS in 2013, the WNUF Halloween special was released, a film produced in the modern day but set in 1987, with a plot heavily reminiscent of Ghostwatch, where reporters once again investigate a haunted house supposedly live on air during Halloween night before everything goes wrong. Though the WNUF Halloween special has a far greater focus on 1980s nostalgia, From old cheesy advertisements to 80s pop culture references, it's apparent that this film is a true love letter to the 1980s, looking back on it from a modern perspective, just as some analog horror series are as well. The film as a whole demonstrates the impact Ghostwatch had on the development of analog horror, with its DNA carrying over to some of the earliest projects in the subgenre like the WNUF Halloween special, inspiring developments in the analog aesthetic and continuing to inspire creators and sustain now popular tropes, like the manipulation of a live broadcast. Films weren't the only thing pushing analog horror forward in the early portion of the decade, though, and on December 23, 2013, a Polish YouTube channel began by the name of Kraina Grzywob TV, or Mushroomland TV in English. Created by Viktor Stribog, the series Poradnik Uśmiechu, or Smile Guide, is by all means the first full-length analog
Smile
horror web
Guide.
series.
Oh, Jesus.
Smile Guide follows a girl named Agatha as she attempts to make a sort of tutorial, alongside a cast of a few other colorful characters. The content and story of Smile Guide is quite mysterious, bizarre, and at times disturbing and horrifying, and it did lead to quite a bit of success.
These mysteries, coupled with the fact that I didn't bother to sign my name under this whole thing, contributed to the early success by giving people an idea that there was something tangible to be discovered here, that it led to something even though there was never a clear indication of it anywhere. Poradnik Uśmiechu surprised people because it didn't seem to try any illicit or any specific reaction from people, which is usually the case with anything. It either wants you to be scared, to laugh, to buy something, to think it's something that it's not. Whatever the motive is, it's usually quite clear. Poradnik Uśmiechu just appeared and things happened there. I can't tell you what my motives were creating this project. Every time I answer this question, the answer is different, and every time it's true. But it's not the whole truth, because no one truly knows themselves. It was just something that had to happen, and I had to do it.
Smile Guide may not have been made with the intention of being an ARG, or being a horror series at all, but its impact on the analog horror subgenre can be found quite easily, from moments within other web series like CHSS that we'll talk about shortly, or other analog imitations from Poland and the Czech Republic. Smile Guide takes on a format vaguely reminiscent of a 1980s or 1990s children's TV show. It's a format that actually pops up frequently in future analog horror projects, perhaps partially due to this series. Smile Guide also includes an entirely original soundtrack that is incredibly New Age inspired, matching the time period of the series' visuals and serving as another example of a retro-nostalgic musical movement around this time. All in all, Kraina Grzywob TV is a fascinating project, with disturbing visuals, storytelling, and performances, and an analog aesthetic in 2013, which paved the way for the rest of the subgenre going forward.
I probably heard the term analog horror when it was going, let's say, mainstream maybe 2 to 3 years ago. From the early 2014, when my project was making rounds, it started spawning similar projects, mostly very ARG oriented, and way more than my project was. There were some more visually interesting ones though, first from Poland, then from the Czech Republic. Suddenly there was a
V-Dog Girl. Hello? Hello? Hold on. Wait for it. Wait for it. There it is! My goodness, hello! Welcome in! Hi! Ardent Arms and Security has arrived for an inspection. Please cooperate with Android personnel. Oh god! I'm gonna be inspected. I didn't do nothing wrong, I promise. I just have my tablet pen, please. I just need my tablet pen. Thank you. Thank you for the follow, V-Dog Girl. I'm very unsure how to pronounce your name. I'm very sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. But yes, hello. Welcome in. We'll be the judge of that. Oh god. Welcome in, Raiders. My name is KV. I'm a PNG tuber artist.
Better places to take a nap.
I forgot how to talk for a second. I am a PNG tuber artist. I worked in this PNG that you are currently looking at, and I'm here doing some art while watching some analog horror documentaries. How are you? Let's see the art. Yeah. I'm doing a commission that I'm working on for my friend Abby, who is a goblin. I'm currently doing the line art because line art is ass. But if you guys want to see some art that I have a little bit more finished, I'm working on another commission for my friend, or I guess not my friend, but a commission for someone named Mirai. And their character is very cute. Just saying you should commission the beef. Yes, but my commissions are not open right now, Mastis. I'm sorry. But yes, also, Ragey, thank you so much for the follow. I'm very sorry that I'm very slow at keeping up with this. I'm kind of dazed at the moment. It's like past midnight where I am. But yes, If you guys need to, feel free to go get food, go do whatever you need to do, do some, oh Jesus. Do some, get some food, get some water, do some stretches, do whatever you need to do. Do that stream aftercare, cause you know you worked really hard, and I just realized that I haven't done my shout outs. Double raid do be kind of a lot at once. It's okay. Would you be surprised if I told you that I've actually gotten raided by multiple people, like at the same time? It can be overwhelming at times, but I think I can deal with it pretty well. Ooh, nice model. What the fuck?
Oh, the strats! The strats! Oh, there's so much shit.
Sounded like you just got smacked, like slapped. Y'all been doing the hawk toss, but I'd be gargling on that thing. Nikto, I need you to be quiet. I need you to stop talking for a second.
Easter egg. Let's go.
Holy shit. I like your model. Ah, yes, Lethal Company. Oh, you're both playing Lethal Company. Ooh. I like your model too.
I hated her.
A pro Valorant player.
That's my baby.
Oh my god.
No, don't knife him. Fuck him. You got it. You got
No, not the ad break. We were playing. My fault game got too silly.
it. You
No.
got it. You got it.
We were playing together. Hell yeah. Stream for like 7 hours, so I'm ready for some relax. Go relax. You deserve it after such a long stream. Oh, stretch back. Yes, tonight we're just here to vibe, so feel free to do so. Like I said, get some food, get some water, do some relaxing, take some sleep,
Good job.
claim your rightful throne, do whatever you need to do. Preferably don't kill people.
That was so good.
That would be bad. I made a new sandwich. I don't want to hear it.
Music video of a popular
Respectfully,
artist made in the same aesthetic as
I
my
don't
videos,
trust you.
even with the same similarities in the music. And then more things. I'm not going to take credit for every VHS-inspired thing that happened after that, because it would obviously be ridiculous. I mean, Vaporwave was already a thing when Poratic Ushmiyaku came out, although I only learned about it from
No,
people
listen, let me
commenting
cook.
on my videos.
That's the problem.
But I'm sure
No.
some brand of analog horror video did spring up as a direct consequence of my project, because I saw it as it happened with different creators using my fanbase as a jumpstart for their projects, linking them on KGTV fan forums and groups. I even met some of them in person during meetings. Now we're creators of OG analog horror series directly or indirectly
Didn't
inspired
commit a
my
war
work.
crime this
I don't
time.
know.
Okay, fine.
Maybe it was all of us
What's the
simultaneously
sandwich?
realizing that horror and mystery in the digital age is increasingly harder and harder to create. And in order to find that spark again,
If I do
you need
not
to
like the
include it with what
sandwich,
technology of the past.
I will suspend you.
During this snapshot
for
of
10
time
minutes.
at the end of the 2000s and the first half of the 2010s, Unfiction was reaching new heights via the Slenderverse and other independent projects, while the analog horror subgenre was still being conceptualized, serving as a nearly invisible, still yet to be defined frontier. As Victor just said, many people
I need
were
to
thinking
update
about
that.
analog
I need
technology
to update
and
stream
how
elements.
life had changed in the relatively new
I'm
digital age
tired
the
of you
internet.
saying that
The digital recreation of
my
analog
comms are open when
mediums
they're
wasn't
not
an
stream
ideal with a
elements.
single inciting event, as seen with the rise of Vaporwave and other nostalgic uses of analog technology around this time period. However, these recreations were seen as an aesthetic only, or simply as a storytelling device, rather than an entire category of projects. However, with the benefit of hindsight, we can see that Smile Guide, alongside VHS, the WNUF Halloween Special, and the Wyoming Incident, are essential building blocks of the subgenre, which is now made up of tens of thousands of projects, including 9 analog horror projects with over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, one of which was Chronographiv TV. This is in stark contrast to the limited grassroots movement we were just discussing though. So, what was it about these projects and the concept of analog horror in general that now appeals to millions of
Rada,
viewers
some
and
red
appealed to
cabbage and roasted
thousands of
garlic and
creators in a
tomatoes,
way that
salami,
inspired them to
prosciutto,
make
and simple
thousands of their
salami
own
plate. That
projects?
doesn't sound too bad, actually.
Especially for the vast majority of fans and creators that weren't even alive for the analog age.
It opens up an aspect of mystery that we've all felt for a very long time and have never been able to properly explore for ourselves, especially for people around the age of the audience now and the age of the creators who are making the content.
It kind of reminds me of being in front of like the television as like a kid, like 3-4-year-old playing with toys in front of the television with the old Weather Channel playing.
For people my age, revisiting that feeling of nostalgia and just that foreign feeling of just old, like not ancient, but still old enough technology.
cooked.
There's
Sure.
something about the feeling
The one
of
time that you cooked.
that late night, 3 a.m. Like just, I'm having nostalgia of memories that I don't ever recall actually having.
There's an inherent mystery in that. There's an inherent mystery in the devices and the technology that was around in childhood that our parents grew up with and told us about, that we never really got to actually experience for ourselves because we were children. We weren't allowed to touch it.
Older audiences would feel some nostalgia and also the perversion of childhood memories.
We were allowed to look at it and wonder about it, and then bit by bit it faded.
My efforts in pursuing this stuff, it kind of helps to like recapture, like kind of propagate the spirit of those times out as far as I can, so that others may have a window into like what that era was like.
So there is a nostalgia, obviously, about it.
There's something about like the nostalgia factor that comes with it.
Feel some nostalgia.
Point of mystery and nostalgia.
I'm having nostalgia.
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 The key driving force behind analog horror's viewership and creator appeal appears to be nostalgia. Memories of the analog age, or for younger fans, memories that are vague or blurry, or even nostalgia for memories they've never even had. The German word Sehnsucht
Is it that if I pick up
applies
money
well
that
here,
falls on the ground?
a yearning or longing for alternative experiences, a life or past that doesn't
Nostalgia
exist.
no longer
or
sounds like a real
collective
word.
nostalgia,
Yeah.
secondhand nostalgia from
Stop saying
culture,
it!
or a newer word, anemoia, longing for a past
Anemoia.
you've never had, a recent word basically created for this exact purpose. Remember, analog
Anemoia.
horror is not analog, and the idea of nostalgia as a driving force behind analog horror will be hammered in by the events and creators throughout the rest of this documentary. For many creators, like those behind the WNUF Halloween special, analog horror is a nostalgic love letter or tribute to the bygone analog age. However, it's not the only force.
As a kid, like I don't espouse frightening children. I have one, and I don't want him to, experience anything before he's ready for it. But I think it's fascinating how the mind tries to make sense of something and give it a space. I think that there's a place to be exploited in terms of a time when you did not understand things as well, and that tends to be childhood.
I was born in '88, so I still remember vividly all the technology being analog, the frailty of it, how the music recorded onto the audio cassette from radio would slowly but surely degrade with each play, how easy it was
They
to
say
break or
nostalgia
lose the
one
signal
more
from
time, I'm
TV
gonna
or radio
implode.
in not ideal
You know?
weather conditions. Don't get me wrong, I owe everything to the digital age, and I would never want to go back to the way it was. But there is something that's been lost, and it's a certain feeling of mystery and the vastness of the world. When information wasn't so readily available, it carried more gravity. If you heard a song in a random movie or on TV, you might never have found it again. It seems inconvenient, and it was, but also somehow more true to life. This feeling of fleetiness is mostly what I see.
I like the idea of analog being this forgotten medium that was useful for a time and has been superseded by digital or more reliable technology. I think a lot of radio and media like that were lucky discoveries by science. And we're like, we could use this. This is great. We can actually render a person's voice this way and decode it on the other end. That's cool. Let's do that. Let's make a network out of this. I think if I'm allowed to go wide with it, a lot of horror for me is about coming to distrust the things that you put a lot of faith in, and a thing where you don't know how you would respond if this structure that you believed and put stock in for your whole life, you came to realize that it did not work the way you
Turned
thought
against
it did.
you.
And
Nexo Salmon.
in discovering
You call
that,
Batman
can
when
you
he's
go
hurt,
back to,
Bruce.
believing in it.
I like that. That's good.
It was easier then, but I don't think that you could. And what do you do then?
Younger viewers
Like
have been
bruised wine.
overstimulated by the excess of modern digital media, so videos that resemble VHS tapes
I
or
saw an episode of Family
vintage
Guy, right? Mainly
broadcasts
the
are
one where
very
Quagmire
refreshing.
covered his
Analog
junk in
television and
bees. I
technology
thought, what
works
if I
well in
auditioned for
conveying terror
Jackass?
because it leaves so
What?
much to the imagination. Its low resolution conveys just enough visual information to disconcert the viewer, while maintaining enough ambiguity to stimulate their imagination.
It kind of ties in with like those cryptid videos where you see, oh, it's a furry, fuzzy video of Bigfoot, very low graphical resolution video of a UFO or aliens or whatever. The more resolution you get from a video like that, you wouldn't see it. You wouldn't see a scary video saying Bigfoot caught on 1080p. Or that's not scary. That's just a video. It gave me a lot of things to like play around with, because if I had like a normal like modern aesthetic, I just filmed it, edited it, and then just posted it. That's it, right? I tried that before. It was boring. The process
That's
was boring.
boring.
But once I had I needed to make it look like an aesthetic. Then I found there was like a challenge there that actually like became fun. Became like a process that I was engaged in.
Creators like David
Hello?
Cronenberg grew up in the age of analog technology and remember being
Crow and
scared of their
Chroma?
television,
Chroma?
or
Crow?
perhaps seeing the Max Headroom incident.
Crowan? Chroma. I am sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Hello, welcome on in, Raiders. My name is KV. I'm a PNG tuber artist. I worked in this PNG that you're currently looking at, and I'm here doing some art while watching some analog horror documentaries. How are you? Goblin Raid? Goblin Raid? Ooh, how coincidental. I'm also drawing a goblin. How are you? How did your stream go? So cute. You're cute. Your face is cute. How about that? What were you doing? What were we doing?
Back in my
Oh,
day,
you're
if
playing
we wanted to
Metopia.
talk to someone, we had to walk to their house.
Bald!
And the houses
Bald!
were close together.
Bald!
They were at least 5 miles. And we liked it that way. Our calves were as hard as rocks. Harder than orichalcum.
Yeah?
It was wonderful. Back when boys were boys. I don't know. What does that mean? Back when the sun rose in the east and set in the west. And cozy shirts and cardigans. That's what we were all about back in the day.
There are
Apple
better
bottom
places to take a
jeans,
nap than on the ground.
boots with the
Thank you for the
fur.
follow.
Everyone in the club, they were looking at her.
Oh my god. But yes, welcome in. Welcome in, Raiders. How are you? How did your stream go? Thank you, Crom. Yes, Crom is best boy. Back in my day, I used to travel 5 miles in the snow to meet my girlfriend. Anyway. But
There are
yes,
better places to take a nap
just
than on the
pals, thank you
ground,
for the
know.
follow. Habit H Long KB. What? Thank you for the follow. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Lovely. Nya. Thank you for the follow. I love your art and
There are
vibe.
better
It was a fun
places to
stream.
take
I
a nap than
appreciate
on
it.
the
Art in
ground, you know.
Metopia. Ooh. How did you do in Metopia? I've never actually seen anybody like go through all of Metopia. I feel like that was the best and worst clip to pop up. I mean, it definitely gave me a good
There are better
vibe.
places to take a
So,
nap than on the ground, you
I just
know.
noticed your stream title, Yaoi is powerful. Dude, I just like I yesterday and today, like I decided after midnight that I would put on some like anime to watch, and the first thing that popped up on my YouTube recommendation was like um if anybody has ever heard of the anime Sasaki and Miyano, uh it was just a bunch of clips of that show, and the dub is apparently really good, so I just decided to binge watch that entire series. And like I was just like, okay, I'll put this on in the background and then draw as well. And it actually like made me so happy. Like that anime is really good actually. But yes, Crow, have a good night post care stream. Looking forward to vibing here after snack. Snack, what kind of snacks you're getting? Come on, bring some for the rest of the class, please. I binged it in dub recently. It's so fucking good. Yeah, the dub is actually really, really good. I really like the way that they're just kind of playing around. It sounds like they're very believable as characters, and I love that. The power of gay. It was the power of gay. Anyway. It's not even Pride Month and them shits is gay. But yeah, we're just watching analog horror videos if y'all just want to sit and vibe with me. Because line art is a bitch, and I need company in order to actually do my work. But yes, welcome on in.
Incident, as I suspect the creators of the Wyoming incident do. Those who view it as a way to evoke childhood fear, or as a window into a bygone age, and even into the ephemeral nature of life itself.
Also, if you guys
Or
want to
beyond
use
that,
exclamation
as we
point
just heard,
fish,
some
we have a
filmmakers and
fishing
artists
game
feel that
enabled.
it's a unique
You guys are
framework
able
and
to
aesthetic to
fish.
design new types of
You guys
stories
are
and play
gonna
with
catch
immersion
some
and
fish.
expectations. It's
It's
about the
July. Gay
nostalgia
is
of a
supposed to be
creator in a
gone.
time period,
It's no longer
the
pride.
ominous,
It's no
rough
longer gay pride.
aesthetic,
It's gay
the
wrath.
immersive, unique storytelling, and blurry childhood memories.
In terms of analog horror and childhood, it's very evocative to me of
Evocative, he says.
again, I
Very
come back to the word
evocative.
trust, but it's the idea of when you were a child, television is sort of a babysitter, but you assume, and maybe kids take that for granted, but you assume that it's been vetted in some way, that somebody who put this out there knew that I could be watching it as a 9-year-old, and they took care to put the right kind of thing in front of me. And occasionally you would run across something as a kid that you're not supposed to see, and it would stick with you, or would scare you, or at least you didn't understand what it was. And that I have examples from my own childhood that like sit with me and upset me, that, you know, it wasn't like I saw a scary movie. It was more like, I don't know what this is on the screen being shown to me, and I don't know why I'm being made to see it. I don't know.
There are
like,
better
I
places to
assumed
take a
there were
nap than on the
steps
ground,
before
you
this
know.
could get to me, but there are none.
Urimic?
I turn the TV
You're
on,
I'm
and
Mick?
eventually I'm going to see
You're
something I don't
Urimic?
understand.
Thank you for the follow.
And
Welcome on in. I'm very
depending on
sorry
how
if I'm
young
mispronouncing your
you may
name.
not even be able to express that to an adult and say, what was that I saw? Why do they do it that way? You know the bumpers at the end of a show, right? And there's a documentary about this called The S from Hell, which is very short and very interesting. But it's about the bumpers that came after like syndicated television. Like I Love Lucy, I remember had this big V, this stylized V that used some in-camera effect. For Viacom was the distributor. But it came with a big fanfare, and it scared a lot of kids at the time.
Oh God, yeah.
And the documentary is about these particular people that they found. They're like, I was petrified. I was terrified of this V. I was terrified of the Screen Gems S. And it's just an S, and it's just a loud noise. But as a kid, you don't know why that is there. I just watched a show that I like, and all of a sudden I have to go hide from the thing that I know is going to be startling and is a complete mood change from the cartoon I just enjoyed. Why is it there? We understand as adults, but then it just breathes in a kid's mind as, you know, what does it mean? And does it mean something that I should have to figure out? And, you know, it's uncomfortable and it's unsettling, and it's lasting.
This just reminds me of when I was a kid and like watching TV in the middle of the night, like going downstairs and just watching TV when I wasn't supposed to in the middle of the night, like on Cartoon Network or something like that. And then like finishing an episode of whatever show I was watching, and then the Cartoon Network like bumper would play, and then just like the 5 seconds of silence would just like freak me out and give me anxiety because like I finished a show and now I'm left alone in a room by myself with nobody else around. Real people were scared of the PS2 startup sound. It wasn't the PS2 startup sound that I was scared of. It was the fucking when you start up a PS2 and then the disc that you put in doesn't get recognized. Like it's the getting pulled into the abyss and then like just being left there with no game. That just kind of freaked me out. But yeah, it's it's weird. I was a weird child.
And I think a lot of video, like being such a erratic medium where there's static and tracking issues and things like that, it lends itself to surprises. Some of it requires In the same way that an inside joke is very funny, but you have to know what the basis is. I think that horror,
You're a weird
any
adult
type of
too, so
horror
that's
that's
not
very has a
surprising.
specific aesthetic,
Listen.
that
I
expects
could
you to
not bring
come
you
in
with me on
that
Fear
knowledge
Factor.
initially is going
What
to
do you mean?
require being, it will need a primer for somebody who doesn't.
I mean, I'm not scared of a lot of things now.
Like you said, I'm sure there's like TikTok horror. I'm sure there are super specific mediums where if you understand how this filter works, you will be scared. But if you don't know, then you would not understand what you're looking at, and you'd say, well, I'm just confused.
Like
The
shit like
impact of
spiders and
memories
stuff
and
like
the
that don't
general
really scare me
concept of
nowadays.
the past is clear throughout analog horror, from nostalgic reminiscing for the analog age to the terrifying manipulation of its technology. We've been talking about all of these mechanisms for a while. Nostalgia, aesthetics, storytelling, and even psychological
said nostalgia.
concepts
They
like
did it.
the fear of the unknown and childhood memories. And while these still aren't the only important mechanisms, they will be the most important ones as we go forward, as at least one of them is behind each major development in analog horror.
Oh, I love this music. Oh, God. Freaky.
On March 7th, 2015, the world was introduced to a new ARG, brimming with quality and new ideas. Knock Plus 10. Knock was comprised of various messages from an AI on board the underwater research station Nocturne 10. The videos are usually codes, ciphers, cryptic messages, and other puzzles, with various retrocomputer effects such
Is
as
you ready
loading
to eat
screens
some
and text
roaches
logs,
and or really obscure
alongside
animal
analog
parts, or be
effects
covered
like
in
glitches
bugs,
and
or
static.
chased down by dogs, maybe
Knock
stuck
is
underwater?
unlike modern
Yeah.
analog horror due to its heavy focus on puzzles, but by all other counts, it fits into the subgenre. Knock Plus 10 is a digital recreation of analog mediums, using the aesthetic to enhance the unsettling atmosphere. And as time went on, it became even closer to traditional analog horror formats with its 2020 revival, bringing in new video formats such as instructional videos. With its unique aesthetic choices and buzz within the nonfiction community during its early years, it was more than likely an inspiration to a few more creators later on, and it's a milestone for the analog horror subgenre, with it being the first web series or project so far that fits in aesthetically with modern analog horror, as Kreiner Gajivab TV is quite stylistically unique despite its membership in the subgenre.
God, I love this brush. Clear Lakes.
Previously, Marble Hornets found a place within analog horror's history thanks to its few analog traits and its impact on the unfiction landscape overall. However, the 2015 Marble Hornets spin-off project, Clear Lakes 44, created by the Troy Has a Camera group, fully embraced the analog traits of its predecessor. Alongside a new live broadcast-inspired format, it is indisputably part of the analog horror subgenre, complete with plenty of glitches
The only
and
one I
VHS
couldn't do is the
effects,
episode where
and
they had
even
to get some
starting
bogus
several common
haircuts, like either
subgenre
bald, a
tropes,
medieval
like the
cleric
focus
cut,
on
or
broadcasting
two
stations
hair
and
left in your
using
head,
VHS
and the
glitching or
rest shaved
static to
bald.
abruptly cut off various scenes.
I mean,
If
I've
you
had
want
long
to
hair for
really
my
look
entire
at
life,
series,
so
again, we
and like my
bring
hair
up
is
Marble
already
Hornets,
kind
we
of
bring up
damaged.
Troy
So
Has a Camera as a group, who
I don't
were
think it would be
responsible
too
for
bad.
the first forays into really using analog technology as a central focus of creative projects dealing with horror.
My hair grows
Their
pretty,
attempt at Clear
like,
Lakes 44, what that was shaping
my hair
up
grows
to,
like
did
really
seem
fast,
to be
so I don't think
the
it would be a
approach they
bad
were initially
thing.
taking. No, nobody knows really what that could have become, but it seems that anything Troy Wagner has done creatively has had roots in analog horror and using analog technology. What I will say is that Clear Lakes 44 did seem to have an impact. It did seem to stir in people the idea of, hey, old technology and old TV broadcasting can be really kind of creepy, because it was right after that that we had what I consider the true first dedicated analog horror series, CHSS. And CHSS was partially inspired by what Troy Wagner did.
Clear Lakes 44 uploaded their first video on August 3rd, 2015 on the Marble Hornets channel. Though when the series was cancelled in early 2016, the videos were unlisted from the Marble Hornets channel and only re-uploaded on a separate account. Clear Lakes tells the story of a station broadcasting videos of Birdwatcher, a man dealing with strange occurrences and a creature named Walker stalking him. The story is told through surveillance camera style footage in a way that feels reminiscent of Paranormal Activity, alongside footage filmed literally through the eyes of the characters, through unknown but canonical means. It's honestly a bizarre, difficult to understand plot that essentially goes nowhere due to its untimely cancellation, and while it does have a heavy emphasis on the ARG and found footage elements, it does firmly lie in the realm of analog horror. Clear Lakes 44 still uses the analog and live broadcast format as a framing device, which was something new for online nonfiction as broadcast horror had not been seen in full-length web series thus far. It, alongside the other Marble Hornets spin-off Ekva, brought the analog aesthetic and analog horror into the unfiction public consciousness even further, and helped to further the genre along and give it more legitimacy. A mere 9 days after the premiere of Clear Lakes 44, on August 12, 2015, came the premiere of Cave of Shadows, an analog horror web series that takes the idea of a half-hour segment of broadcast television and runs with it.
I take
While
pride in my hair.
cryptic
It was
side
straight in
videos
my
and
hair.
ARG puzzles
If I was
are
to straighten my hair, it'd
interspersed,
look like
the
prime
full-length
Sergio Ramos.
broadcasts are dedicated
I don't know
to an
why I
attempt
thought
at
you
digitally
said
recreating analog media
Carmen
in a
San
live
Diego.
TV format.
I was like, good
and
for
I
you.
believe its second channel from this series, Awake, even features a stereotypical VHS font and uncanny valley faces. Cave of Shadows and the Awake series look more stylistically similar to the modern subgenre than any other analog horror project we've covered so far, and these stylistic choices actually spread thanks to the attention the series got from YouTube creators. However, they were often viewed in a negative light due to their lower level of quality, and its impact was small compared to the upcoming introduction of the biggest name in analog horror.
Local 58, let's go!
Local 58 initially was, I wanted to do something with this idea of the moon being malevolent for some reason, or carrying some weight.
Moon's haunted.
Like an inscrutable,
Moon's haunted. What?
unknowable.
Moon's haunted.
I'm not even going to say intelligence, but just there was something wrong with it. And I wanted to do something with that, not as a story. And the idea of like emergency alert system and that broadcast noise is frightening. It's something that it demands your attention.
This guy's so calm.
It's time to talk about the elephant in the
There's
room.
something with his
The
like
godfather of
speech
analog
pattern
horror.
that's so like calming.
Local 58, created by Chris Straub. Local 58 is an anthology web series, and another example of broadcast horror, with a loose plot based around the moon being a Lovecraftian entity, but with mostly self-contained episodes imitating a local analog TV station, with broadcast interruptions, PSAs, children's shows, and more. It's commonly thought of as the founder of analog horror, and while it clearly isn't the first project of its type, it was still among the first in the subgenre, and was the series responsible for its popularization, as well as the widespread nature of its formats and styles, like emergency alerts. However, it took some time to actually have this impact. Local 58's massively popular YouTube channel began on October 31st, 2017, but the series began 2 years prior, on October 26th, 2015, and it had other history even before that, with a Channel 58 being referenced in Straub's 2009 immersive short story, Candle Cove, a story which
Candle
actually
Cove.
carries many themes and ideas that would be prevalent to analog horror.
I feel like Candle Cove is absolutely something that could show up on Local 58 that you'd have to, as a viewer, confront and come to terms with, maybe. And having done Candle Cove and also having sold the rights for it, and
Sold
not
the
being
rights
able to
to
do
it?
more
Oh,
with it.
that's
Not that I
right.
thought there was more to
It was
do
on a
with it. I
TV
think
show.
that was,
That's interesting.
It was, what else could be done with it? It's best with as little detail as possible. But I wanted to be able to evoke that sense in an audience still. But really, I only did it, I did the first one, Weather Service, without intent of making more. I thought, I got it out of my system, I'm done. And I was doing a channel with my friend, Chainsaw Suit Original, which was like, it was a comic I'd been doing for like a decade. And we did a podcast around it, and we're like, let's do video stuff for it too. So that was what that channel was. I uploaded that video at night like at midnight. I'd finished it in a fugue state. I did it in like across 20 hours, and I was like, okay, I'm done. And he's like, I saw it uploading. I didn't know what it was. You didn't tell me you were going to do it. It was very upsetting to just find it. But it did real well. It was received well. And I did 2 more on that channel. And then it lay fallow for a while. Before I thought, well, it could be its own thing. Like, and it's also very disjoint from the content that also was on the channel. So I was like, no, it should be its own thing.
The first episode, Weather Service, released on October 26th, 2015. The second, Contingency, on January 16th, 2016. And the third, You Are on the Fastest Available Route, on June 19th, 2016. A website called local58.info existed to host and promote these early videos, but this early history has now faded away. The site is offline, and Chainsaw Suit Originals was later renamed to FilmJoy. After Fastest Route in June 2016, Local 58 went on hiatus for over a year before being reborn on its own channel. But these first 3 episodes planted many seeds for the expanded analog horror subgenre, and created the formula that most projects imitated until around 2021, with this formula essentially being a live TV broadcast that starts off seemingly innocent or normal, before taking a turn for the horrific in the middle and going back to normal at the end, often with heavy static, TV broadcast hijackings, emergency alerts, and a degraded tape aesthetic.
That's tough because for Local 58 at least, and maybe this also speaks to the you know, relatively small amount of them that I've released yet, but I didn't really want to go back to the same well, and I think that it's very hard not to do the structure of normal broadcast, enjoy, break in, it's outside your house, you know, ominous, confusing message, back to normal broadcast, nice time, then break, like they've always been among us. Like, so I wanted it to
There are better places
cohere.
to take a nap than on the ground, you know.
If it's going to be, if the
Holicky
broadcast
Web.
is going to be broken into,
I'm very
then who
sorry
would
if I mispronounced
want to
that. Welcome on
convey
in.
that?
Thank you for the
I
follow.
think it's a cool device to deploy once in a while, but I knew that I could hit that emergency broadcast sound over and over again, and it's a scare every time, but I also think it loses energy at that point. I wanted it to have certain moments.
Someone asked me a very difficult question.
That toyed with analog in general. Somebody had uploaded it's still up there. I think his name was.
You said it right. Hello.
But he had uploaded for free use.
Very proud of myself.
Like an hour and a half.
Yeah, welcome in.
VHS like glitches.
We're vibing
and bad
tonight.
tape and you know whatever, and moments that were like backgrounds too that had just you know the impression of a beach at sunset, or the impression of a you know a shape, something that was on the video that was glitched. But I had a lot of fun looking in through that for scenes that would inform some of the horror, some of the moments, and probably my favorite.
What's the best type of food? The type that you eat?
Discovery was in Weather Service. There sort of seems to be 2 voices. One is don't look at the moon, and the other one is you can go out and look at the moon. Why don't you look at it?
Go look at the moon.
But when the video gets broken into by the voice of reason that appears and says, "Don't go outside. Don't look in the window. Don't look in a mirror in case there's the moonlight is in it." The very first frame, there is a sort of abstract background that was from that VHS tape, and I think it had black here and red here. So when I typed in black, "Do not look at the moon," it says, you can't read "do not," and it says "look at the moon." And then that person realizes in horror what I do not want. That's the opposite of what I said. So they have to highlight and change the color of the chyron so that it is now legible. And there are a lot of things in doing Local 58 that I don't think I would have thought of or been able to like storyboard until I sit down with with the public domain stuff and just sift through it and find things in it that's like, this would be good to alter in this way. You know, sometimes in editing them, there's a moment in that is sufficiently good to change the course of the episode and make it like, no, this is better, this is stronger than what I was gonna do.
These original Local 58 videos, and mainly the very first one, Weather Service, were so unique and pioneering. The media formats and even the story themes that appear within this original trio have been proliferated throughout most of analog horror. Of course, Weather Service features two entities fighting for control over the emergency weather warning feature on the Local 58 station, with frequent broadcast interruptions, static, and hint towards an extremely powerful, mysterious, Lovecraftian entity, which, in Local 58's case, is the moon. These ideas served as the basis for a lot of analog horror, and while fictional emergency alert videos had been around for some time, they were limited in scope, and Local 58 was seemingly the first to transform the concept into a horror short film, pushing it in a more mainstream direction and causing many more people to make their own.
There were, at the time when I started Local 58, I know that there were stations, or there's absolutely were people who would upload recordings of broadcast events, emergencies, or whatever, or like, you know, fans of air raid sirens, like where they record the sound in their town just so like, this is what it sounds like. And I liked a lot of that stuff, but I wanted it to go a little bit further.
Meanwhile, the second video, Contingency, ditches the cosmic horror aspect and goes in a more grounded direction, serving as the basis for yet another set of formulas and ideas used by some later creators. It takes the concept of a disturbing or corrupted government PSA and is basically one of the most terrifying videos to ever grace the internet, with the US government ordering citizens to kill themselves and others in order to win a final victory over invaders.
Oh, no.
I think that having a vague source of danger or horror, I think just on its face, by definition, the mind goes to, well, is it a god? Is it a Lovecraftian, unknowable entity that's doing this? Just by keeping it vague, I think that we leap there anyway. Guarantee, like, there's absolutely ways to not go there, right? For example, the second Local 58, which was just about the government says we lost, so maybe just go outside and kill yourself, and we'll show them. If we all get on board with this plan, we'll show them, which is such a terrible idea. But there's no interference from other powers there, you know. That's just an awful idea that enough people got on board with, that they were able to turn it into a law, I guess. And you don't need monsters to do that. Like, we can do that. We're good at that too.
And finally, You Are on the Fastest Available Route plays with the idea of the horrors of corrupted technology, with a found footage format and the concept of a corrupted GPS system guiding a driver deeper into the forest, until his destination arrives to him first. But beyond just the surface level themes and structure, Local 58 also set the first person viewing perspective as the default for analog horror. That feeling of you as the viewer, watching TV at night and seeing these horrific things. It's one step further into immersion than even most found footage, unfiction, and previous analog horror, because those have characters, and while it attempts to make you think it's real, it's still not a situation where you are the one participating.
By being a viewer of it, I don't want there to be a main character. I don't want there to be an intercessor figure that's experiencing this. I want you to be the person experiencing this. I want to feel like you're watching TV late at night and then the broadcast is interrupted, and then now this is your problem as the viewer. It is not the problem of a character in the show, and when whatever befalls them happens, you can be like, wow, that was tense. But it's not, it's fake, it's fiction. I just watched it happen. I want it to follow you out. I want it to linger when you stop watching. You're the main character. And I think that found footage is similar, because in watching it, you know, in a way you become the discoverer of it, And you know, I remember I watched the Blair Witch Project for the first time. It was out in theaters, and the ad campaign was very effective in trying to make you think like, we found it and we're going to show it. But I didn't see it in the theaters. My friend had gotten a VCD of it. He got a bootleg of it. But I watched it with him and a couple other people in a dorm on a laptop. And I think that was way more effective than if I'd seen it in a theater, because I felt like, you know, it's almost like he found it. I found this footage in the woods and let's watch it. And up until, you know, the credits roll and let you know that this is a piece of fiction, like it was sold. I thought it was informed so much by not just how good the movie was, but also how we saw it, how the arena in which we saw it. But I think that, yeah, analog horror that looks back is trying to, I think
The hair is lined. I did it.
That sense of
I lined the braid.
paralysis or powerlessness that you might feel when this series of events becomes yours to deal with somehow, instead of just something you can suspend and turn off.
Local 58 was a trailblazer
Oh, I
for
can
the
merge all
entire
these
analog
heckin'
horror
layers.
subgenre we know today in many, many ways. The theme, structure, style, and formats, the first-person view. For years, it would all be defined by Local 58. And as we discussed earlier, this all stemmed from the analog age, from nostalgia, and from childhood memories.
You know, the origin of these was KLCS Channel 58 in Los Angeles, which is actually not in Los Angeles proper, where I'm from. It was in like the high desert. It's like Palmdale or something. And that's the channel that showed me a lot of stuff as a kid that I came to understand later. But it was a fascinating thing to have discovered. A lot of what they showed, like you wouldn't get to see Sesame Street there. You wouldn't get to see any of the public broadcast fare on Channel 58. You would see film strips from like the 70s and like educational shows from Canada. But I can point at specifically the show on Channel 58, the actual Channel 58, that sort of spurred a lot of this in me as a kid. And somebody has uploaded them to YouTube also. So if you want to go look for it was a show called Inside Out.
The following is from a national instructional television series. The series and related materials were developed and supported by 32 educational agencies, with
32.
additional support from Exxon Corporation.
To the best of my knowledge, it was a series of educational film strips that I think was designed for a Canadian school system classroom. And its function was about 10-15 minute vignettes. Its function was to show the student a moral quandary and then end on a moment where the teacher would turn the projector off and now lead a discussion with the class about what they had seen.
Oh, but they wouldn't have like a resolution.
In that context, it makes sense.
No.
As something you would watch at home by yourself with nobody to contextualize it for you, all I saw was a disjoint event that was happening to a kid and was never resolved.
Come on. Light. Oh no, it went out. I don't have any more matches left. What do I do? Oh well, who needs a fire anyway?
It would always end on something like, he fell in the river, he's gonna drown. And then they go freeze frame, and then they push in. It's just film, it's a film effect, it's not video. And then they go to credits.
What the fuck?
and you just
Okay,
linger.
that's
You don't get to
terrifying.
find out what happened because nothing happened. It's supposed to be that's the teacher's job now, and that's the kind of stuff that played on that channel, and it was not fun. But I could not look away as a 10, 11-year-old. It's like I wanted to see it.
It's like Children of the
and,
Corn.
It wasn't meant to be understood by the single viewer, which is incredible that it would even make it to air. Nobody was deciding, you know what, should we run these? Because it seems like it's designed to lead a classroom discussion. No. So it just showed up in our house, and it stuck with me. And if I can evoke
So now
that
I'm
in
just here to
people,
face this alone.
then I've succeeded.
After all of that, even though the pieces were in place, like the formula, the format, and the themes of analog horror, it would still be another 2 years before they were widely adopted, and Local 58 became the godfather of the subgenre. In that interim period, several other analog horror projects would take the spotlight, continuing to develop the subgenre.
So my name is, well, I call myself Turkey Lenin III, and my main project was CHSS in 2016.
CHSS began on January 16th, 2016. It's a series with a strange, foreboding, vague, and sometimes surreal tone, containing psychological surveys, bizarre drug commercials, special messages, and ominous voiceovers.
When I blinked, I felt I saw someone in the corner of my eyes.
Not even including the ARG attached to the series as well.
The reason why I had participation in CHSS is because every other series, well, most of every other series I've seen, for example, the Slender series like Marble Hornets, Everyman Hybrid, all those ones, they did have interaction. They had some fan interactions. So it made it seem that this thing is happening in real life. It's not separated by the fourth wall. CHSS has a story set in the present. I wanted that story so I can make a viewer connection. Nowadays, I see a lot of analog horror is more like you see what you see. You don't really have any say in what's happening. I don't think that's bad. It's very focused. Sometimes the interaction also doesn't suit the story itself. So I think that's also another good. It's a good choice. It's a choice. It's just a choice.
The analog videos of CHSS play into this ARG, with hidden messages or bits of lore that explain the mystery of the series. A story of secret experiments, monsters, and broadcasts from CHSS being re-uploaded in the modern day.
It's kind of a tragedy. It's a tragedy story, right? It's a monster tale, right? It's a Cold War thriller, but it's mostly a tragedy because it involves two sides, the protagonist and the antagonist, at odds of each other, not by their own fault, but by the fault of their masters. You know what I mean? My human character used to be part of the CHSS program. It's not his fault. He's just employed there. This creature I had, the Katya or Atlas, she had no choice in becoming the monster. She was just a slave to her masters, So it's a tragedy of circumstance, basically. I wanted to tell some story, Soviet versus the United States, espionage story. Furthermore, MK Ultra, the CIA project, all those weird fringe projects. You can see what CHSS was. It was an arms race between two nations. A creature sent over to do electronic espionage, psychological espionage, and a project in order to combat it. It's basically a Cold War thriller. It's basically one of those Cold War's Tom Clancy novels or whatever. My one was taking place in two timelines. One that flowed during the 1980s, the backstory, and also another present-day interaction that was the main story arc.
CHSS was a milestone in the analog horror subgenre, because even with these two parallel timelines, it was the first project outside of the still obscure Local 58 that was more focused on being an analog horror series than a present-day ARG, with its emphasis on the 1980s era videos. Many of the earlier analog horror projects we've talked about are all clearly present-day stories, with their use of the analog aesthetic being mostly for, well, aesthetic reasons. Something supplemental to the ARG elements and the plot of the videos, not a core part of the project. However, CHSS uses the analog aesthetic meaningfully, and in a way far more alike to the rest of the analog horror subgenre than the earlier 2012 to 2015 projects.
The analog aesthetic was not a genre, but just a sub-tool for anyone trying to make a web series. So there was no clearly defined because it has VHS elements in it, it's an analog horror. It's just, oh, it has VHS elements in it, cool. It's a VHS aesthetic themed web series. To expand on the story, I wanted to tell it in the period of the 1980s to 90s. So first off, I needed to make it so that obviously you wouldn't have 1080p or 1440p on like videos from the 80s, right? You had to set it with analog horror and VHS. The story I wanted to tell required analog aesthetic to entrench it in reality.
The extra multimedia content in CHSS's ARG was required to understand the complete overarching plot, but the videos themselves stand alone as a project and a story. CHSS was a successful series, and further exposed the unfiction community to the analog aesthetic, and ways that the aesthetic and idea of broadcast horror could be used to create suspense, tension, and horror. And today, in recognition of these contributions, CHSS is often given the inaccurate but honorary title of the first analog horror series.
I have no idea why people call it the first analog, but I don't mind the title. I would say, actually, honestly speaking, the title I think I would give myself was kind of like the bridge between the old web series and the new analog horror, because mine had the features of both. I had a running series with main characters, main like story arcs, main like antagonists. Then I have the horror aesthetic, all that stuff, or the normalcy under the normalcy. There's a level of sinister dealings, you know. At the time, CHSS was nothing groundbreaking to me. I was just making another web series, just contributing my little part.
Analog horror was well into development in 2016, especially now with CHSS and its focus on manipulating non-found footage broadcast television formats for horror in a 1980s setting. It was a massive step, but not the only important horror project with an analog era setting that year. In July of 2016, one horror project took the world by storm and kickstarted a massive wave of 1980s nostalgia in the United States. Netflix's Stranger Things. It's well documented that this series created a wave of nostalgia for the 80s and generated a massive amount of interest in the time period, even in teenagers that weren't alive for that time. And as we've covered, nostalgia for the analog age, especially in young fans, is a key reason that analog horror has risen to success. There's no way to quantifiably measure the impact the series had on analog horror. However, it may not be a coincidence that analog horror began finding increased success only after this period. And moreover, it's incredibly likely that there's an overlap in fans of different modern created 1980s based horror media. Stranger Things created a demand for more 80s based horror projects, and it's a demand that analog horror very well could have filled. For now, let's get back on track with the third project in the Marble Hornets franchise, ECVA. After several puzzles and teases establishing the end of its predecessor Clear Lakes 44 and setting up a new broadcast station, ECVANet, the project made its YouTube debut on October 13th, 2016. The analog aesthetic is used in many ways during this series, from station IDs to advertisements for drugs or jobs, to live broadcast interruptions, to an unfinished children's show known only as Alice Pastry. ECVA takes on an even rougher, more unfinished version of the analog aesthetic than most analog horror projects, with the text, graphic design, and actions of the station fitting that of an unsteady, partially collapsed organization. But this is what makes ECVA unique, while still fitting in perfectly alongside Local 58, CHSS, and future broadcast horror projects. The broadcasts we see in the videos are mostly a form of reruns from when ECVA was a fully functioning station, and they're being recorded and uploaded to YouTube by an observer, specifically our main character, Hawkins. The modern-day story serves as a narrative framework for where these broadcasts originate from. CHSS is formatted very similarly, and in fact CHSS and ECVA are incredibly reminiscent of each other, which does, in a way, make the dual modern-day and past timelines emblematic of the 2016 era of analog horror. The subgenre was evolving quickly, moving from a series of unconnected projects with the analog aesthetic to a well-defined broadcast horror format in only 4 years. Live TV broadcasts and a modern-day or ARG narrative framework were the defining characteristics of analog horror projects at this time, and while broadcast horror would remain the dominant type of analog horror for many more years, analog horror ARGs did fade away following ECVA and CHSS, as non-ARG analog horror web series became dominant in the space, though this wouldn't be permanent. While CHSS and ECVA were still ongoing, 2017 served as the calm before the storm, with no major developments in the subgenre until Halloween night, October 31st, 2017, when Local 58 ended its hiatus, finding new life on YouTube. And with the first new video, Station ID, on November 2nd, 2017, Local 58 claimed the title Analog Horror for the first time, formalizing the new subgenre and creating the term that would soon be used by millions of people.
I'm not sure if the term analog horror existed before I put it on the trailer for Local 58. I wanted a way to describe the horror, like these short films, in terms of like what kind of content could somebody expect. Like, I think I looked a lot on YouTube and other sites where people are doing horror shorts, but they could take any form, and largely they are actual short films with actors and camera crews and all that, and those are anywhere from 5 minutes to half hour would be considered a horror short. But I was only interested in delivering something that used these very basic visuals, rather than like I need to have a main character, I need to have dialogue, I need to have all the trappings of what everybody thinks a short film is.
With this formalizing of the subgenre, Local 58 provided the template for the analog horror web series, which would soon cause the decline in analog horror ARGs. Over the course of 2017 and 2018, Local 58 gained traction across the internet, from Reddit posts to reaction videos on YouTube, including a few from semi-high-profile creators like Etika. There were even a few videos imitating the unsettling emergency alerts from Local 58's weather warning, such as these by Million Fowl in 2016 and early 2017. But despite the fact that Local 58 was in place and that it was successful and well received, it wasn't the widespread juggernaut we know today. There was no large-scale internet dominance, and really no recognition of the analog horror subgenre. Local 58 did not yet have the success it would know later on, and it was relegated to being in a small corner of the internet with essentially a cult following, not yet the father of a subgenre.
I had no big plans for Local 58. It was just going to be the one video, but I liked doing it.
Cheap viewers. Goodbye.
But if that had been it, then that would have been it. I wouldn't have been super disappointed, because I did the thing and it did what I wanted it to do. I just wanted to express that one conceit, that one moment. As long as you look at like it being successful or widespread, like what is the actual definition of success? If Local 58 had only been the one episode that came out, I would have felt like it was a success because I did it to the way that I wanted it to look.
We don't need you in here taking our gerbs.
And
yeah.
It would be okay if only a couple people thought that worked,
I've refreshed the chat box in here so they don't get any free advertisement.
Local 58 was now out in the open. It was well made, well received, and it worked. Obviously, because it sparked an entire subgenre later on. But for right now, well, the subgenre was still ripe for new creators. There were many viewers in Local 58's first year, and at least one of those viewers was inspired enough to make their own series. On June 29th, 2018, the first project by creator Aiden Sheik began. Channel 7. Channel 7 was heavily inspired by Local 58, even being dubbed the first Local 58 clone by some, with an unprecedented number of emergency alerts and similar TV programs and formats to Local 58, ECVA, and Awake. Despite this, it was still watched and beloved by thousands of fans in a short time, as Local 58 was. The demand for more content like Local 58 with the same amount of polish was there, and though it was viewed in a less positive light, Channel 7 delivered, filling this void with rapidly produced, well-edited content. Channel 7 benefited from being the only new analog horror project at the time, outside of rare one-offs like the WLCB TV special presentation video. It succeeded in part because of this, but more importantly, it forged the path for future creators to succeed in the genre. He showed that using Local 58's formula, even as a teenager with a limited budget, was possible. And that's a takeaway that is key to the analog horror subgenre, just as it was to the Slenderverse and creepypastas. However, this takeaway wasn't only important in a general sense. it would be applied much more directly very soon. And by very soon, I mean on August 8th, 2018, when popular unfiction and horror commentator Nexpo published his YouTube video discussing Local 58.
How's it going? My name is Ryan. I run the channel Nexpo. I like to cover a lot of internet mysteries, disappearances. I touch on true crime, but I mainly like to dig into unfiction, ARGs, analog horror, all of that.
Hell yeah.
It's a big passion of mine. I remember I was living in Colorado. It was late 2017, and I was just going through YouTube one night. Then I saw one of their videos, and I was just fascinated. But at that time, I didn't know how to formulate any sort of story with it. I thought it was just like a couple one-off videos that were really spooky and cool. And I was like, man, this is awesome. And then that was it for like the discovery of Local 58. And then I'd say about a year later, throughout 2018, when I started putting out, I guess there's a show for children, and I think he put out like a channel trailer or something. That's when I went through it again, and I was like, man, there's something here. I was like, man, I can make a video about this. Like, I haven't seen, like, aside from like Crane at Gorgie Above TV and Smile Guide, like any like actual analog horror series like this. So yeah, I went with it. I feel like that series, like it deservingly needed to be shown, and I just wanted to broadcast it to people and share it with my audience, and I feel like a lot of people resonated with it, and it led to, I guess, ideas flooding in for the next wave that would eventually come.
Nexpo opened Pandora's box, and it was time for the inevitable part of every genre's life cycle: clones. As an example of this phenomenon, when the video game Doom came out in 1993 and enjoyed immense success, it was followed by hundreds of so-called Doom clones, to the point where any first-person shooter game was just classified as a Doom clone. However, Doom clones eventually evolved into what we know as the full-fledged FPS genre, and, well, we're not calling FPS games Doom clones anymore. This isn't an isolated incident, though. Rip-offs, lookalikes, and other projects taking heavy inspiration from the leader of a genre are very common. Even within the unfiction field, it happened with the Blair Witch Project and found footage, it happened with Marble Hornets in the Slenderverse, and it happened with The Sun Vanished in Twitter ARGs. Local 58 and analog horror would be no different. Directly after the Nexpo video, Local 58 began gaining attention rapidly, with wider social media attention and smaller creators discussing Local 58 because of Nexpo exposing it to the public. After this point, Local 58 began gaining almost 10,000 subscribers per month, while Emergency Alert and other broadcast horror short films copying Local 58 began appearing at a rapid pace for the first time, giving credit to Local 58 and sometimes even to Channel 7 for their inspiration. In the months directly following the Nexpo video, beginning around September 2018, these clones began popping up constantly. Channel 11, Channel 495, Local 64, just to name a few. Almost all clones, with many giving credit to the two main non-ARG analog horror series that came before.
It's interesting you brought that up, because I completely forgot about that phase of things. The post Local 58 pre-analog horror blow up, where there were a lot of one-offs. I remember coming across a ton of channels in my recommended that were just one video, and it was like Local 58. And I had fun going through those, and I actually wonder how they're doing. But there were a ton of them.
The Local 58 clones contributed to the growth of the analog horror community regardless of their quality. They're an important step within any subgenre, and while they are largely unoriginal, some of these clones would go on to have unique characteristics, or would go on to either turn into something more unique or give their creator enough experience to make a second project that is more unique.
I mean, you can't not do a broadcast interruption. You can't not use static. You can't not, there are a lot of stuff that's ingrained in the medium. In this particular analog horror needs these devices and these tropes to function. I know that a lot of new creators are thinking about how do I differentiate what I'm doing? How do I not rip off? How do I not just copy? And I think you start with a copy, and then you figure out what your voice is inside of that, and what and that's what will be unique about it. I think that was the core. Is like that's what differentiates it too. When people are worried about how will I make mine stand out, well, you talk about what scares you. Like a lot of this stuff started as an idea that scared me. If I looked at the moon, or what if my GPS was giving me instructions that were now increasingly incorrect? Seemed like it starts from there. Like that's the seed of it.
Analog horror is a collaborative online storytelling space. Like creepypasta and like the Slenderverse, it's a place for new creators to be supported by a formula and take their first steps as a creator. Local 58's massive growth starting in August 2018 is what spread its formula around the internet and led to many of these creators taking their first steps. And that growth was largely caused by Ryan and his coverage on the Nexpo channel. Nexpo was a catalyst for analog horror's current existence. Without that video in August 2018, analog horror would not exist in the form we know it as today.
It's weird, running a YouTube channel, because I'm just a dude in a room. Like, it's weird when you hear things like you have impacted people in this way, and it just doesn't feel real, honestly. It doesn't. Like, I feel like if I just took myself out of the equation, like, things would just still be as they are. And I guess when you tell me things like this, it does kind of, open my eyes a little bit. Like, certain things have impact, and I feel honored, I guess. I feel very honored that I've been able to share this amazing medium with people. And I'm excited to see where it goes in the future, because there are so many cool things that can come from this.
Thanks to Nexpo, the subgenre was experiencing its first boom, and by this point it was now a recognized genre. From here it would only get bigger. Local 58 hit 100,000 total subscribers in June 2019, just in time for another YouTube channel even bigger than Nexpo called Film Theory to discuss Local 58 on June 15th, 2019, giving the series even more attention, with 50,000 new subscribers in June alone.
Oh, good lord.
This is where analog horror, and Local 58 specifically, was really starting to take off.
I think I noticed when people cared enough about Local 58 to make memes about it, that I would discover it in places where I had not been,
That's
where
the
there was
dream.
stuff about looking at the
When
moon.
you've made something
or
that
the
you care
fastest
about,
route, and seeing other people spreading it,
and people make memes about it, that's when you
getting
know
excited
that you
about
fucking made it.
and wanting to make things around it, I think. Yeah, so seeing fan art or memes about it, it was such it's a good barometer for whether or not an audience cares, is engaged.
The Local 58 clones were in full swing, but beyond that, with the foundation set by early analog horror ARGs, the moderately successful Channel 7, and now the surge in Local 58's popularity, there was a new generation of creators aware of the genre and aesthetic, ready to try it for themselves, not as clones, but as unique creators in their own right. And this is what we'll see in the latter half of 2019 onwards, a massive explosion in the amount of projects and videos in the analog horror subgenre, leading all the way to the modern day, taking over unfiction, and dominating the entire internet.
Bye. Close the door on your way out. Analog takeover. Indeed, indeed. Nice hair, dude.
Why are we talking about analog horror? There are so many questions, so many moving parts, and so many concepts to cover. They're almost all still left to wrap up, and I'm going to. But on a fundamental level, the one thing we're trying to
Bear with
answer
me
and
for a second.
explore above
Shut up, I
everything
wanna talk about
else
something.
is, how did we get here? The history of analog horror.
You ever think about why we're
And when
here?
it comes to that, nothing is more crucial than the last piece of our timeline, a period I'll be calling the analog takeover.
With the, I guess, analog takeover that's been going on lately, I am happy to see it. What made me realize that things are really taking off came 2019, 2020-ish, when here and there I just find more and more projects just popping up, and especially through the pandemic, a lot of new ones started coming to light and stuff, and like Baddington, the Wall Files,
Paddington!
all those guys.
Walton
like, started
Files, let's
coming up everywhere.
go!
I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And then Mandela Catalog comes along and
Boo.
just shoots to the top. And I'm like, okay, analog horror is big. Like, what's going on?
2 years ago, the name Arthur Fleck had
I do not care for your films!
The analog
Shut up!
takeover is not an exact event. It's more of a movement or a process that started in 2019 and mainly occurred throughout 2020 and 2021. And as we go through it, it'll wrap up a lot of these loose ends and lingering questions. So let's just start with the first project in this period. Analog Archives on June 5th, 2019. The second analog horror series by Channel 7's creator, Aiden Sheik. The subgenre was evolving, and so was this creator, now moving in more of an anthology direction, focusing on multiple different stories simultaneously, with more Videodrome-esque harmful broadcast signals and strange supernatural occurrences. The series was very popular and well-liked, with a similar structure, level of polish, and path to success as Aiden's previous series, Channel 7. However, at this point, Local 58's dominance was still all-consuming, and Analog Archives utilized few new formats, focusing on TV broadcasts, emergency alerts, advertisements, and security camera footage, while also including ARG elements with lore in the video descriptions and an in-character Twitter account. But what makes this series important is that Analog Archives is a transitional project between what I'll refer to as Analog Horror Gen 1 and Analog Horror Gen 2. This is yet another concept borrowed once again from the Slenderverse, because Analog Horror's parallels to it remain incredibly relevant. Now, Analog Horror Gen 1 was defined almost entirely by the television broadcast format, usually with ARG elements, which basically includes everything we've covered so far. Analog Archives often fits in with those design principles. Most videos are broadcast horror. However, it also has some unique ideas and key links to Analog Horror Gen 2. It was the last major project to take on the common traits of the previous era of analog horror, and it acts both as the end of the old, broadcast horror, but also as the beginning of the new, with its use of the medium of VHS tapes, like instructional videos or found footage, which our so-called Gen 1 used rarely, if ever. Analog Archives does appear to be one of the first projects to take a step into this medium, and it would be key to Gen 2. However, it was still heavily linked to Local 58 and other projects of that period, carrying traits like broadcast horror and ARG elements, rather than fully embracing VHS tapes and Gen 2's other traits that we'll discuss soon. The most notable unique idea from Analog Archives came in its ending on July 12th, 2020, in the form of a fictional 5th generation or Nintendo 64 generation video game called Summer 64.
Ooh.
It wasn't the first analog horror video of this type, but this is part of a larger topic that I want to touch on later. But what it showed was that Aiden Sheik was transitioning into Gen 2 of analog horror over the course of Analog Archives development, rather than sticking solely with the preconceived ideas of Gen 1. With Local 58's influence being magnified in the end of 2018 by its growing success and clones spreading across the internet, it would be likely for the subgenre going forward to be completely defined by broadcast horror. And it was, on the small-scale level of clones of Local 58. However, to the filmmakers out there with the skill and creativity to make a majorly successful project, Local 58 exposed them more so to the idea of analog horror, and its use of the analog aesthetic, not just broadcast horror. And those ideas translated into a new interpretation and idea of what analog horror is.
I've seen creators finally get away from using the same
Nick
old
Nocturne!
concept of public access television, and that's why I say Local 58 must have been the hardcore originator of people recognizing that as a term and a style. Because what is Local 58? It's the story of a public access TV channel. You know, it's the relics of whatever was shown on that channel for that local station. And again, we look at Clear Lakes 44, which was largely doing the same thing. We look at ECFA, which rose from the ashes, which was doing the same thing. We look at CHSS, which was doing the same thing. You have a whole lot of people in the beginning who were all about this public access kind of idea, and people are finally getting away from that, and they're realizing, okay, we could use aspects of that, but we don't have to be completely reliant on it. It's actually the technology itself that's pretty damn creepy if you think about it. One of the things that Mandela Catalog has done very well is Alex Kister has recognized you can have media that was shown on TV, but you can just as easily have analog horror and tapes that were created and then doled out to people for specific things. You can have personal recordings of things like police departments, fire departments, emergency teams, little bits of collective media from characters in the story. So there's the awareness now that, okay, while I love public access as a concept, and while people love public access as a concept, I am not limited to this. It's actually well beyond that. And I've been ignoring, as a creator, um, what the wider field of media can be in terms of analog tech and the horror that can be told with that kind of analog tech.
While Analog Horror's Gen 1 was defined pretty clearly by broadcast horror or live TV and the common use of ARG elements, Gen 2 is a little more murky. So much of it is experimental and unique from one another, but the so-called Gen 2 is mainly defined by its nearly exclusive use of VHS tapes, often using actual characters within the videos, with a distinct lack of ARG elements and out-of-video story. And in fact, videos in this period usually utilize immersion-breaking elements like credits. And those are something that Chris Straub had pioneered and normalized in this subgenre with Local 58, due to one of his previous projects, Candle Cove.
Candle Cove looks like a forum thread and got absorbed. I think creepypasta.com, which existed around that time, took it and posted it there. I didn't have a problem with it. It's just that I just wanted my name on it. I was like, it's okay, like just link back. But it got shared to a lot of places as though it was an actual forum thread. And as an artist, I think that's super cool and good. But as a business person or as an owner of intellectual property, I was like, no, like just leave my name on it. That's link back to it. Don't take all of the stuff off and then say, I found this. I was on the website. My friend screen capped it, and now you can see it's real. That was my issue with it. I mean, no, it's less special to have a name on there. I understand that, but especially if it's scary and it's supposed to be ephemeral and it's supposed to be discovered, that it can harm the thing. Like, do I spoil Candle Cove by getting it copyrighted? Where you could look it up
the
in the
suspension of
Library of
disbelief,
Congress
but
or
like,
the Writers Guild. That is a
probably
property.
credit
It's like,
a
well, that's
dude
not real then.
for the
That's
thing that
okay
he
if
made.
it's not real at that point. Yeah, I didn't want to have that experience again.
The topic of credit in analog
Hi,
horror, thanks to
Pixie.
Local 58, is actually a very important topic. Not only to analog horror, but to unfiction as a whole. For a long time, immersion breaking has been incredibly
Excuse me, I
discouraged
think
in
I'm gonna-
unfiction. This is not a game.
I
It
think I'm
used to
gonna,
be the golden rule for all
like,
of
call it
creation.
in a bit.
Everything was real. But with this new generation of analog horror forming in the wake of Local 58,
How much time do I have? It's like another hour and 15 minutes, so I'm probably gonna call it here. Hello! Hi, Pixie! Eep is important, yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm calling it when you're just getting here, but I have been streaming for about 2 hours. So, and it's like 2:30 a.m. So seems a good place to call it. I think I've made some good progress on the line art. I've been looking from the start. Nice. Otskare. Yeah, thank you, Pixie. I appreciate it. Let's see. Let's go over here. Let's find somebody to raid who's maybe still on. I don't know who's still on or not. I don't. I don't keep tabs on people in the VTubing sphere. Jesus. Not Discord. Not Discord playing on me. Something terrible is going on.
And I know I can't move at all. I cursed the name, the one behind it all.
Actually, let's see. You guys want to go a spear? Yeah. Nana KV. Nagis, why are you still awake? Go EPs. Let's see. What you mean? Go to bed. It's if it's late for me, it's late for you. You live in New York, bro. My goodness. Um, let's see. What do you guys want to see? Do you guys want to go Vigi game or do you want to go art? What's the vibe for tonight? It's not that late. Honey, it's 2:30 a.m. for me. Art? Alright. Let's look. Actually, let's look for somebody new. Let's look for some new friends, shall we? Let's see. Hmm. Uh, hold on a second. Yes, we shall go for art. So, I want you guys to give me 1, 2, or 3 in the chat. 1, 2, or 3, and that will decide who we go with. Two? Okay. We got 1 for 2, 3. Okay. Take it tyranny away. We got 1 for 2, 1 for 3. We need someone to break the tie. I guess not tie. Two? Okay, 2. All right. So, okay. So we're going to raid. Yeah, sure. We're going to raid this person named Willow the Baphomet. Baphomet? They're very cool looking.
There are better
Darth
places to
Nomad?
take a nap than on the ground, you know.
Darth Nomad, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome on in. But yes, we're going to be rating Willow the Baphomet. Their model is very cool looking. Oh my gosh, stretching. Thank you guys so much for joining me. It was very fun. I'm glad you guys had a good time. Thank you so much for all the raids. I really do appreciate it. My Uber Eats was 10 minutes early and I was still healing a roulette. No! Well, at least you get to eat food now. But yes, there is the raid message if you are not subbed, and there's the raid message if you are subbed. Thank you very much for joining me. Tomorrow I might be streaming Final Fantasy. We'll see what happens. Um, yeah, I'll let you guys know on my Twitter, which if you are not following, you probably should. I don't have that set up. What? Wow, cringe. Guys, did you know that I'm cringe? Anyway, yeah, I'll let you guys know what happens. But you guys be nice. Be nice. Don't do anything that I wouldn't do. And get some sleep. I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.